So hi, everybody. As Jacqueline announced, I am Jillian Blount. I am founder, owner, CEO of WildFree Kids OT up here in Alaska. I'm an occupational therapist. And before I was an OT, I was a special ed teacher for a decade. And as part of my student teaching, I got to work really closely with an OT, and I fell in love with that piece of it. And so that's it took me 10 years from then to get into actually OT and start OT school. And by then I had a lot of experience under my belt working with kids from really rough backgrounds, we could say, those at-risk kids, a lot of kids with behavior and emotional issues. And 5 years of my teaching career was teaching at residential treatment centers, where I worked really closely with therapists and counselors and psychiatrists and thought leaders and the staff that worked with these kids in their homes and on the site. And so that was kind of my niche, is finding and working with these kids with really extreme behavior and emotional needs and the trauma. Some of it was acute. And so you'll see it later. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I really got to work with a lot of people because we have to manage the environment. And so when I say environment, I mean where we are, not just outside, but the classrooms, the homes, everywhere. So why a pediatric clinic in the Valley? There's so many. We're quite saturated. I wanted to bring a unique service model. I'm not the only mobile OT in the area, but I am one of the only ones taking the majority of my kids outside, even in the winter. And some people who live in warmer places like California, Arizona, they're kind of opposite, where this summer they wind down. But because it's warm, whereas we're ramping up in the summer now because it's getting really fun. And I was outside all winter with kids. We had lots of fun. I'll show you some pictures later. But I really wanted to help close the gap between home and the community and school. I was a special ed teacher, so I have that background. One of my own children has had an IEP. He just got off speech. It was like momentous. That's what we want. And so my own child, I had to advocate and fight for my own child and be a parent of a child with a special need. And so now going into the home and working with families and in their surroundings, their backyards, for example, I get to help close that gap and help navigate the special ed process, for example. And it's really been great helping people find services and help them navigate through some of that's kind of difficult and murky. And then I've noted that I don't just help the children, I'm really helping families. And it's not just, mom or dad. There's caregivers, there's adoptive parents and foster parents and aunts and uncles. All of these people are raising children. And it's not just helping the children, it's helping those families and not changing anybody, but helping them and giving them the tools so that they can help, again, next slide, help manage the environment and really help their kids regulate and learn and grow and be safe. Why WildFree? Kind of what sets me apart, I guess. I know the nature-based part sets me apart, but I have extensive knowledge in de-escalation strategies and techniques as a special educator and as working with the rural centered. I had to do a lot of training in this area, and I got to learn a lot. And it's not about those end techniques of restraint, for example. It's all those steps leading up. It's all of that tone of voice and everything. And kind of synthesizing several strategies together is a lot of work. And it brings something to families to give them a different viewpoint. And then being trauma informed is really important. I know trauma is that big buzzword right now. And people sometimes say I use an assessment in my work that's called the trauma assessment and connection, or trauma expression and connection assessment, sorry. And I have to preface people, the trauma word just means what is their reaction to stress and stimuli. Some of these kids have had trauma, can mean longstanding stress. It can mean actual trauma. Just the past couple of years, we've had almost a collective trauma with COVID and the transition and all of it's just, we're going to see the ramifications of that. And that's why we're taking kids outside, because they were kind of stuck. And then being able to provide caregiver education alongside during a session when I'm working with kids, that's been really important. And the focus on the nonverbals that 93% of our expression is nonverbal. And so that's a huge piece, because sometimes we don't realize it. And it's interesting to see the changes, the little tiny changes. And also working on behavior modification, but with a relational aspect. So using intuition, using a caring and positive intent in order to help change behavior, not to change people, but to work on helping them feel safe, regulate their bodies, have some awareness. So now the fun part. Now I have some slides just to kind of show you what this might look like. For example, this looks like one of my kids, my own child, telling them all about OT. Like, what do you do, Mom? What is your job? And I told him all about it. And he goes, it sounds like you play with kids all day. And I said, kind of. I said, but within that play, there's so many things going on, and it's hard in a short amount of time to really explain. But this is an example. It had just snowed. The snow was beautiful. There were 3 of us outside, and we looked on the driveway, and it was beautiful. And we were painting with food coloring. And so we had to make food coloring, and the little bottle is one of those water enhancer bottles. They take a lot of work to take apart. They're little tiny nozzles. So we were working on a lot of fine motor and visual skills. Then we had to plan and problem solve and communicate, because we were making a rainbow and we couldn't all make the same color. And then we had to figure out who's making the big one and the medium and the small. And so then we had to shuffle our feet and go down the path so we didn't trip over each other. Sometimes
Oh, Jillian, we might not be able to hear you now. There we go.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, now we're good. I can hear you.
Okay, I wasn't. Okay, we are fine.
I'm telling you. Sorry. Okay, technical difficulties. So I'm not sure how much you missed, but there's a lot going on in this picture that is behind the scenes, and that's what we as OTs do. We take these occupations, we take everything we do and we break it down, and how do we help people do them the way they want to, modify them. And so here's another picture. We have more snow because we had so much snow this winter, and it was fun, but it impeded us a little bit. But here it got just nice enough where this kiddo was outside without a jacket. Really grounding. We could work on some interoceptive ability, being able to recognize like when we needed to put a jacket on. Maybe we stayed in the sun, but we just took some everyday things, stuff that really packable snow into those cubes, and we were throwing them at these targets. Now, the interesting thing about those targets is, in a clinic setting, I know what the wall looks like. I know how to mount things, but when you're outside in nature, you have no idea what you're going to come up against. And so we had to tampen down the snow so we could even get to the tree. We had to trying to find places to put everything in our little clippies. So there was a lot of skills going on here even. And this thing is silicone. It was moving. My friend was getting a little upset. So we had to problem solve. And instead of saying, put it on the floor or put it on the ground or put it here, I said, man, that looks really like it's bothering you. What should we do? Giving the children awareness, because so many of these kids get told what to do all the time. And so we have to give them that awareness, but with that support. I wouldn't do that if somebody is completely dysregulated. I would provide that support for them. So here's another picture of us doing a scavenger hunt outside. Now, this was a spring scavenger hunt where we had to, you can see we can take these pieces off. We had to look through all of the various examples and pick what might we see in the springtime in Alaska. And it's hard to tell, but this actually says body of water because we did not want to pick the puddle. My friend did not want to pick the puddle. And I said, we're good. Body of water is a bigger, broader, and then we could narrow it down. And so even those concepts really teach you a lot about the kids you're working with, that they might struggle with visualizing exactly what that means.
And here we had to find some branches with moss on them. And here we had to find some like pine branches. And so this last one is we were playing tic-tac-toe again with those bottle squirters. And the first couple games were difficult because we had to maybe relearn how to play tic-tac-toe, for example. We had to orient our X's and O's correctly, but those sticks were not together. So it was not a beautiful tic-tac-toe board for us. We had to rebuild it every time because we could just pick it up and move it. It was great. So we just would pick it up and move it. And by the end, I was facilitating, but I wasn't saying, hey, let's fix that sticker. That stick looks really weird. They were fixing it and they were talking and figuring it out and saying, hey, where should we move next? Should we go here? We already went there. Let's try this spot. And then they tried really tiny ones. So we tried various ones on the ground, outside, to work on, again, a lot of skills. And this one here is one of my favorites. I went and pulled a bunch of paint samples from, I think it was Walmart or Home Depot, and cut them apart and laminated them so we could do a color scavenger hunt. And obviously this winter was pretty brown and white. And that's what we found with that color. We found more. And I have some for flowers. I'm actually really excited because we found a dandelion the other day, like the first dandelion of the season. Yay! So that was really fun. So as you can tell, we're working on so many skills. It's not just playing, but by going outside with other kids, that's the goal. To work on social skills, we need other people. And so that's been really great, is being able to have a couple kids together outside problem solving, because that's what we want. That's what we have to do. And so that's my goal, is to get more group based. And some of these happened in backyards. Some of them happened in the park. Some of them happened in driveways. So we've been kind of really blessed with being able to go outside and wherever they are. And I'm hoping to secure a practice location outside soon so we can have that continuity again of environment and be wild and have groups. So I have a quote. This is, growth and comfort do not coexist. And so this is from Ginny Rometty. She was the CEO of IBM for, I think, 40 years and a chairperson. She was like the first female CEO of a major company. And this, I feel like this quote really exemplifies just everything I do, because we can't grow if we're staying in our comfort zone. We can't grow if we're doing whatever, the same thing. And that's what I often tell parents, is when we're trying to change behavior, the problem is we're going to see an increase in that negative behavior before it gets better. And so don't give up. We'll work on this together. And it's hard. And I've seen some people give up. And that's kind of it. Is I've even told the kids too, hey man, I know you don't like this. You're trying something new. This is really hard. We are going to get there. And let's picture in our mind what you want it to look like. And that's what we're working towards. We'll get there. And that is it. And that's all I have. I know it's real quick.
No, this is wonderful. And I just want to compliment you. We do have a smaller group here today, but again, we have mighty key people. We have Dr. Alyssa Rosier. She is a pediatrician from Prince of Wales. And so again, there is a big conference going on today. So I think part of what's happened is that almost everybody I could think of that I wanted to be here today is at that conference. And they said, send me the recording. And I'm like, I will. So so I love that last quote that you shared with us, because I think, very apropos to the conference, that the leadership conference, where we're being told exactly the same thing. When you work with a child outside, there's growth happening when you work with children inside as well, but what's the difference with doing it outside in nature, and do the kids maybe have a little bit more resiliency? They're more able to kind of push past barriers.
Yeah, I've noticed less distractions. So again, there's a perfect environment. Being inside is great. It really is. This just adds a little bit different. And think it takes away a lot of the distractions, and there's some novelty to being outside and doing things. I could do the same thing at a table and I could bring it outside
Mhm.
and we could get a different results. We could get longer attention span. We can, and we're noticing more. And that's a huge piece, is just noticing. Today, I was telling you earlier, one of my kiddos was like, can we just play a game and sit on your, I have a lot of stuff in my vehicle, if you can imagine. And I had an outside blanket and we just sat on the blanket and played a game that we could have gone inside to play that game. But the child decided to sit in the sun. It was beautiful outside. And we just kind of sat outside and played this game and talked. And the next thing I know, this kid's like, there's an ant on me. Why are there ants on me? And just being able to talk about why are there ants? And I didn't have to say, hey, sibling, please, you know, we
Mm.
don't, right now we're doing our thing, because it was just us. But then all the airplanes, there were so many airplanes outside. And then we were like, wait a minute, what was happening this past weekend with airplanes? And where's that one going? And where do you think, what direction is that one? And so we were looking at clouds while we were playing this game, working on handwriting and problem solving and the visual skills. And so we were working on a lot. And again, that can happen inside, but there's less distractions. The environment offers those changes that we have to notice and react to.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to open this up. I noticed that Dr. Rosier has put a link in Healthy Children. So it would Terry or Alyssa, would you like to share some information?
Hi, I'm Elisa Roger. I'm a pediatrician in Whale Pass, Alaska. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for your work. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they just did a webinar focused on the power of play, and there's a recording here. And then Richard Louv, I think is how he pronounces his name. He's written a lot about the power of nature for children. He calls it vitamin N. I remember at the 2020 American Academy of Pediatrics National Conference, it was over Zoom, but he was the keynote speaker. And so he does a lot of good work on that. This might seem like a interesting question, but do you do any telehealth with like the family outside and you're outside?
I have not, because I've been able to be here. And a lot of the reason I've done telehealth, but the reason was weather. And so then it kind of like people can't get out of their driveways, or there's an ice storm or someone's sick. And I have suggested, hey, are you guys going to be outside? What are you doing? A lot of times I will tell the parents, like, go outside as much as you can, and then we'll do our session, because then kids are more regulated. And they're
Yeah.
doing things with snow, and I'm sending them resources to with snow. And a lot of these kids are so creative, they don't need the adults to give them ideas. But I haven't, but I thought about that. I think that would be a great idea. It's just every time we
Yeah.
do telehealth, it's either the weather or people are sick. So even then I want to say go outside anyway.
I just recently had a conversation with the mom of one of my parents or one of my patients, and she was saying, her child, she goes to occupational therapy here, but I think it's probably adult occupational therapist, but she gets so bored because the occupational therapist thinks like she's younger than she actually is, and so she's just bored with all the activities. And so when I saw your bio, I was like, I wonder if she does telehealth, if she could do telehealth for one of my patients here in Southeast. But yeah, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for your question.
See, that's what I love about these presentations, is because I'm not sure we would have thought about that. I wonder a little bit, Jillian, if you could just maybe share ideas with that occupational therapist as well,
Yeah. And that's one of the things that made me realize like the behavior aspect was really my specialty. Is adults, fellow therapists, parents were coming to me with questions. And I have a ton of ideas. And that's one of the things that actually kind of grinds my gears, is when people don't assume competence of someone. or they have this, they think they're younger than they are. Like, that's just one of those things. I don't know if you saw when you said that, my like whole body kind of went like this. Um, because it's sad, because I don't want anybody to ever think that of me or my children or anybody I work with, that, you know, they're less competent than what they are. But I am open to collaborating. I'm open to sharing ideas. I'm open because I have so many ideas. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Alyssa, I loved that phrase, vitamin N. Like, it feels, I was telling Jillian before we started formally that when I was sharing about her presentation, everybody I spoke to said, of course, because they themselves, if they were upset, they got outside. If they had children, they had this experience of getting the child outside to change behavior. So it's just interesting to me that this seems to be well known, and yet this idea of doing it formally as a practice outside. So anyway, do you maybe work when you're working with families? Do you say, how much are you guys getting outside? Or like, how well is this being integrated into formal care is my question.
Yeah, that's probably the question. I think the issue is we're just getting out of winter. And I know it was a really hard one, but even then, trying to get everybody outside, even in the winter when it's cold and dark and rainy or snowy, whatever it is, even then that was hard to do, even for myself. And it's something sometimes you have to force yourself to do. Even just getting by a window makes a big difference. Even just getting to a window. I mean, there are studies of hospital rooms where people are just have a window in their hospital room, and they improve and heal so much faster than if they didn't have a window. So even just opening your blinds, getting by your window, you know, getting some natural light, which I know is hard in the winter here sometimes. But my goal is not to really change people, and I give them the option. And a lot of it is the kids have a choice too. I have one kid who's wanted to do outside every time I've been there. There have been a few times I said, man, it's too cold out. It's like 10 or 15 below. That's not safe. I want to be outside, but it's not safe. And so we've had to switch inside, because you have to teach them, you know, that safety. But I don't ask parents how much they get outside, because I don't want to ask. I don't want to throw one more thing at them. A lot of the parents are, you know, they have a lot on their plate, and they have a lot. And I don't want to come from that side of seeming like I'm judging or imposing anything on them, because I don't want to. I think that's what happens is as soon as the sun starts coming out, everybody gets outside as much as possible. Anyway. And I know I have another family. I asked them, I was like, we're going to resume sessions. And they're like, outside, please, outside. You know, they're like, let's get outside. And so that's really exciting when I give them the option and they're like, we're going out, let's go outside. Even in their yard, it makes a big difference. And I think it gives another viewpoint to their backyard or to their driveway, even when we can facilitate something new and novel out there and give them some new tools.
So we're down to the last 5 minutes. Terry, we have not heard a question or anything. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I wanted to talk about obesity in children and thinking that the more active and also observing in my own family when laptops and tablets and phones are so readily available as something that people hand to the kids just to keep them occupied so that they're not bothered. I think it's great that Jillian is doing this program, and I hope it can all work out very well for her.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Alyssa, did you have anything that you'd like to kind of share as we wrap up?
Thank you for doing this and keep spreading the word. You know, I have you on my radar. So if I ever hear of like a national conference or something where we need a speaker, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I would love that. That was when I thought about all the things I could do with this, that was kind of that like ascension model of like, what's all the stuff that could help in outreach and give people more input and show them all the different things we could do. And so one of those that's an idea of being able to share this with other people. And yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I truly appreciate it. Jillian, that was stellar. And so I can think of some other places that maybe we can share this presentation. And Terry, thank you for coming. It's nice to meet you. Alyssa, you are like so amazing, such a rock star. I'm amazed at all the Zooms I'm in, and there's Alyssa too. So thank you all, and thank you for coming to Health Tie Open Innovation. I will see you again in 2 weeks. And just a reminder that that's our last one for the season, but I do have some ideas as we move forward over the summer. We'll do some pop-up events. So thank you so much for coming. And thank you, Jillian, for your
Yeah,
presentation.
you're welcome.